Thanks everybody for joining us today. We really appreciate you being with us. My name is Tim Taylor. I'm the co-director of the NorCal Clean Cities Coalition. We have recently rebranded from the Sacramento Clean Cities Coalition, and at various times I will clearly say Sacramento Clean Cities because it's a habit that's been built in for 2 decades or 3 decades, I guess. So it'll be a little hard for me to get over that, but nonetheless, I'm hosting today. The host was going to be Keith Leach, who is my co-director, and unfortunately, he is not able to join us today. My partner in running the platform today is Aaron He, our project manager at NorCal Clean Cities and Communities. Today's speakers are Duane West with California State Department of General Services. He's just a little tiny fleet operator with just a little over 45,000 vehicles on bill. So he has a little something he can offer us, I think. Drake Zwahlen with Geotab, who will be co-presenting with his partner, Hani Hawari, who are both with, as again, Geotab, who have obviously done an enormous amount of work with vehicle technology in their telematics areas. And Ron Wirth, fleet manager with the County of Sacramento. Sacramento has basically over 3,000 vehicles on bill, and they've won a number of green fleet awards in their time here with Clean Cities, and so they're clearly a skilled fleet management group to hear from. We'd like to give special thanks to the fleet management groups that we have been partnered with, MEMA, NAFA, and the APWA.
Good morning. My name is Duane West. I am the State Fleet Policy and Reporting Manager with the Department of General Services in the Office of Fleet and Asset Management. I do want to kind of take some of the hero out of Tim's introduction. I am more of a liaison to all of the different state agencies within the state of California. So those 45,000 fleet assets, they are controlled by individual departments, and I'm more of a resource and a liaison to help work with state agencies to provide or validate data related to their fleet acquisition needs and their plans. So we work with departments to ensure that those plans align with state policies, including the zero emission vehicle transition goals. We do that while also trying to minimize operational disruptions. And so I want to just take a second to walk through how we do that. The transition to zero emission has created a very strong need to be data-driven and data-centric. So my two teams that work within the Office of Fleet and Asset Management work very closely with departments on the three things we see here. Fleet composition reporting gives us a snapshot of really what's in the department's fleet currently, as well as the state fleet overall. We leverage telematics and analytical tools to provide real world usage, as well as historical insights. And then we use those insights to develop policy and compliance, and then to review that policy and compliance to ensure that the state is meeting its mandates, identifying areas for improvement, and using data to justify when we don't meet those requirements. We are getting further and further into the ZEV transition, the off-ramps are starting to look more and more appealing. And so having that data allows us to justify when we do need to take them. Part of what I'd like to do is just walk through a couple of examples how we at OFAM have worked with the department to look at their fleet and to determine whether or not transitioning to a ZEV makes sense or if it's feasible. One of the main exemptions that we work with on departments comes from range anxiety. Everyone's afraid they're going to run out of electricity while they're doing their job. So what we have here is a real world example of how we use telematics data to support the ZEV exemption. There on the right, you'll see a screen snip where a department provided a year's worth of telematics data showing that some vehicles frequently exceeded the daily range or the range of a ZEV on a daily basis. These vehicles were often in the field all day with no opportunity to stop and charge, meaning even if the drivers wanted to, and none of them do, a charger break just wasn't feasible.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So if in case you missed it, here's what I was talking about first. We're doing ZEV composition reporting, a lot of compliance reviews, and we use that to develop policy. I do apologize for you not being able to see that. And how about now? Can we see the screen snip on the left showing usage or the right showing usage?
Yep.
Okay. So these vehicles showed the Geotab with Geotab data. They showed that they were going way outside of what the actual zero emission vehicle could do. And the nature of their job meant that they couldn't stop for even 15, 20, 30 minutes to charge up. So the department came to us and said, we can't buy ZEVs for this team because they're out in the field too much. They're exceeding the range. We were able to use telematics data to show, yes, 6 of them, absolutely. They exceed the range. You can see the distance they're traveling and then how many times they're going over it. You can see there one was over 133 times it exceeded the range. And so we were able to give an exemption for those 6 vehicles. That made the department super happy because they got an approved exemption. But what it also showed is that there were 6 vehicles that could transition. And instead of treating all of these, in this case, these are cargo vans, instead of treating all of these cargo vans as one entity, yes or no, we were able to use the telematics data and usage data to show which ones could viably be transitioned to ZEV when looking at range. And having this data allowed us to reveal opportunities for ZEV adoption that might have otherwise been missed. One more example that I personally think is great to use, and I'm sure Drake can give you more information on it when it's his turn, but we use our telematics data to look at heat maps for usage. These heat maps show where a vehicle has been. In this case, this is 2 examples from 2024 showing all areas that a vehicle traveled. You can see that the image on the right shows a vehicle in a much more remote region, whereas the vehicle on the left shows them mostly operating in a centralized city region. Occasional trips out to another city you can see there. So these heat maps are powerful on their own, but you can use other data to reinforce the need or the availability to go to a ZEV. What I want to do is take a closer look at the driver on the left. That driver initially came to us with no data, just sent an email and said, I can't use a ZEV, I need 4-wheel drive. So we were able to pull this data and see the area that they were driving in, and then take a look at that same area. We pulled it up on Google Maps with a satellite view. And you can see that that same area is very mountainous. It's up in the mountains, it's remote. It absolutely would need 4-wheel drive capability. And then we also took a look at the U.S. Department of Energy charger maps to look at charger infrastructure. We can see here that there's only 2 sites in that same area. So when you combine the limited infrastructure with the need for 4x4 capability and the reduced ZEV range that we experience in cold weather due to battery temperature, need for climate control and terrain, it becomes clear that this candidate is not a good candidate for ZEV transition yet. This is a great example of how combining data like telematics, mapping tools, and job function information can validate operational needs and support informed data-backed decisions. Now, I gave these 2 examples as examples where it made sense not to transition. The default, I think, should be that you can transition and then use the data to help your driver when they say that they cannot. That helps you start from a place of we can and prove that you can't, as opposed to starting with I can't and having to prove that they can. So,
quick question for you, Duane. We did get one when you were talking about those vans that did and didn't meet the standards. Are they weight class above ACF or are they below ACF?
they were below ACF.
Thanks.
And that's a good point. When we do a lot of our ZEV exemptions and our ZEV evaluations, we do not evaluate ACF at OFAM. That is CARB's job. And we kind of decided to separate those 2 out. And so while we do take CARB into consideration when we work with our departments, we always tell them we need to ensure that this is also meeting ACF, because ACF's regulations for medium duty, heavy duty are a lot more involved than what OFAM's medium duty, heavy duty policy is. And that's by design. We wanted ACF to take the lead on, or CARB to take the lead on ACF, and to reduce the amount of possibility for us wanting different things and creating an environment where it became even more confusing than ACF already is if you throw in OFAM now has a bunch of requirements. So we kind of took a step back from ACF as well as from the medium duty, heavy duty, and we just have really a general guideline and rule that says if it's available in medium duty and heavy duty, we want you to start there. And then from there, if you do that, I know you'll meet ACF. And then you can dive into ACF, get whatever exemptions or work with CARB on whatever different things that you need. For our light duty, it's kind of the same thing, but we do specify some very specific things, like the 2 examples we just talked about, where we understand that operationally it doesn't make sense to go zero emission yet. So that kind of leads to just ZEV transitions and policy compliance. Just a few key takeaways is the ZEV exemptions and the ZEV transitions have kind of ramped up over the last couple of years. The first one would be to look at the fleet holistically. Instead of Bob's truck or Debbie's van, keeping the vehicles flexible and open to be moved around and utilized where they're needed most is going to open possibilities for transitions to ZEV. If we have a 4x4 gasoline truck that we see a heat map showing is always in and around the city, maybe that's a good opportunity to transition that truck to that area that is remote, needing 4-wheel drive, and let that other one have the opportunity to transition to ZEV. So taking a look at everything, and I know that this is very challenging because a lot of drivers, it's their truck, right? And they have the mentality of it's their truck. But taking a look at it holistically and showing that your entire fleet can be moved and done in other places where operational feasible opens a whole lot more opportunity for ZEV transitions than what you initially think when you approach the problem. The second thing I'd say is to use data to support drivers when they say it's not possible. When you take the time to validate legitimate needs, like in the examples with the range limitations and with the remote area with the need for 4x4, you build trust with your teams and your, in my case, departments, that you're not here to shove it down their throat. Rather, you're here to help them transition to what's coming anyway. We all know that ZEV transitions are a challenge, and we would rather not go through the pain of doing it, but that in the long run, it's going to be better. So when you can use the data to support your drivers when it's not operationally feasible, it helps build that trust, and it won't stop all the exaggerated claims. Like the guy who says he has to carry a Jersey barrier in his truck everywhere he goes, so he can't use an electric truck. But it will help reduce them, and it will help bring data to the conversation so that your operators are thinking about it when they're thinking about what they can actually do. Finally, balance compliance with operational needs. Getting to compliance while maintaining operations and making all of your drivers happy is not possible. You can't make everybody happy. But with using data, like the example we gave with the range limitation or the driver in the mountains, you can approach it with a scalpel and look at individual needs rather than with a chainsaw and end up in a situation where you have ZEVs, but you can't complete your operations. That's really all that I had. I really appreciate being invited out today. Like I said, I had a lot of examples here. I consider it to be opening for Drake at Geotab because the state implemented telematics, and we are still finding ways of using that data and how we can see that data to help us make those fleet decisions, not only for ZEV transition, but just in general. So thank you so much for your time, and I will stick around for questions at the end.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. For those that don't know me, I'm Drake Zwahlen with Geotab. Duane, great job, as usual. Work with Duane a lot. So I am on my side today. We have a few slides to go over, just our agenda. Electric vehicle suitability assessment, which is complementary to what Duane was sharing, having the data to support what vehicles make sense to transition and which ones don't, which ones would be to your cost benefit as well, from a total cost of ownership, which is very helpful. And then going into just sharing with you that if you don't know, specific to California, the CARB Clean Truck Check and the CARB or the BAR Continuous Testing Program, what that is, any updates on the contract, and then we have some next meeting topics that'll be complementary to this call today and evolving into additional value adds for everyone that's in attendance. So I will pass it over to introduce you to Hani and going over our electric vehicle suitability assessment, EVSA for short.
Thanks, Drake. Hi, everyone. My name is Hani Hawari, and I'm a lead product manager here at Geotab. And my focus is on helping fleets transition to EVs by using the data they collect from their telematics. So when we're looking at, advancing your sustainability goals, like we acknowledge there are several challenges. The first one is you have to navigate through a maze of various emission rules, regulations, requirements, and incentives. So all of that plays a part into defining your electrification blueprint. There's also the mandate you're getting from higher ups. What are the stakeholders' expectations are, and then you want to marry this with what can be really achieved with a realistic electrification plan. And this is where data plays a big part. If you don't have data from your fleet, from different parts of your organization, it's gonna be very hard to come up with a solid electrification plan that will be easy to justify and explain and get approval for. So, and this will once you get the data, then it becomes easier to get the buy-in and the investment needed for that. So to go through that, here at Geotab, we look at electrification specifically as a 4-stage process. And so we try to help fleets achieve sustainability through these 4 steps. The first one is understanding where you are today. So with all your gasoline and diesel and other alternative fuel vehicles, what kind of emissions is the fleet generating today? What kind of fuel usage is it doing? And then identify opportunities for electrification. And this is where planning EV transition and the tool, the EVSA tool, plays a major role here. So it will help you. I'll show you how evaluating which vehicles are good candidates to be electrified. And then this helps you make informed decisions about, okay, if I want to electrify, this is a reasonable plan and it's grounded in data. So it's more likely to succeed. Now, we don't leave you there after the transition. Once EVs are in the fleet, it's important to make sure that you and the drivers are comfortable driving them, comfortable completing the operations. Otherwise, it's a big investment that is not, if it's not being used, then you've wasted all this money if the vehicles are not, people are not comfortable driving them. So we provide tools to provide this confidence to the fleet operators, to the drivers, to everyone in the organization. And the last part is emission reporting. This is a part we also take care of. Next, please. Okay, and all of this is not possible without making sure we have EV model support. So this is an area where we at Geotab spend a lot of time and resources going to all these major models and make sure we can get the data to support all the applications that we can use on top. So as of today, we have support for more than 350 major models of EVs worldwide. And as I mentioned, this is very important because if the vehicle EVs you have are not supporting, you can't get telematics out of them, then everything else you build on top is gonna be incomplete. And this is not good for a business case. So once we have this support, we then build transition tools to help you to electric. As I mentioned, tools to help you optimize your electric fleet operations. And then we also have open APIs. So charging providers can dig into this data and provide better charging optimization solutions for you. Next. And so going to the electrification plan, there is different buckets of data points that when you're creating the plan you need to take care of. The first one is financial and understanding the TCO. If I electrify a subset of my fleet, am I going to be saving money or not over the lifetime? Which vehicles will save me money? Which ones will not save me money? Understanding this aspect. The second one, and I believe I should have changed the slide. This is more important. It's operational. Which vehicles are good candidates to be replaced by EVs without disrupting the operation, because you want to start with the operation and identifying vehicles where EV can do the job successfully, and then look at the financials of those. And later, the environmental. How much greenhouse gas reduction are you expecting if you electrify? How much emissions are you offsetting by switching to EVs?
Hani, in this case, somebody was asking, what emissions besides GHG are you monitoring and reporting on?
So when it comes to ICE vehicles, this is the tailpipe emissions that we do. For EVs, there are no tailpipe emissions. So we are not tracking anything beyond the tailpipe emissions right now. For plug-in hybrids, there is emissions. So naturally we track that as well.
So are you talking about all criteria emissions, NOx, hydrocarbons, carbon
For now,
monoxide?
it's hydrocarbons. We're looking at the others. The others are a bit more challenging too because they're model specific. It's a bit harder. Hydrocarbons are easier to calculate.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, so for electrification, there are two major ingredients here. The first one is vehicle replacement strategy, understanding which vehicles are a candidate, and then what kind of charging infrastructure do I need to support my transition? So for vehicle replacement, the important part is understanding, first of all, you need to put criteria or for what a good fit for EV replacement means to you and to the organization. Do you want the EV to be able to do the entire operation without having to rely on public infrastructure to make it back to base? Typically, we see most fleets, they prefer it this way. They want to make sure that a fully charged vehicle can do the entire job and come back to the charging base without having to rely on third-party infrastructure. Also, what about TCO? Do you want to break even, or are you willing to pay a little bit extra just to get EVs into the fleet? So all of these play a part for your vehicle replacement strategy. And the other one is, how do I stagger my replacement plan? So not all vehicles are up for replacement right now. And even if I identify like a subset of my fleet, are they at their end of life, or do I need to create a multi-year plan? Next, please. And this impacts the charging infrastructure. So for charging infrastructure, beyond looking at the range, you also need to understand for every vehicle, is it dwelling in a consistent location every night for long enough to be charged for the next day? So once you do this and understand if it's viable to charge this vehicle, the next one is looking at all these vehicles in aggregate where they dwell. So you have one site and X number of vehicles dwell, and you identified that they can be charged. Then what does this mean? How many chargers do you need at this site? And how much is the peak power load that you're gonna need at the site, so that you can start conversations with the utility and say, this is the peak power load. And it helps you understand whether you need to upgrade anything in your electric infrastructure or you are in good shape. And this analysis will help you prioritize different sites. You can see which one is easier to electrify versus harder based on the current status of this site and where it needs to be. Next, please. Home charging, I know home charging is one of the options that some organizations look at to reduce the cost of on-site infrastructure, but I also recognize that it might be very hard for the public sector, especially because it needs legislations, and sometimes this is gonna be a very slow process. But this is one option that some fleets look at when it's a possibility. Next, please. So another ingredient, before I move on to the solution itself, I want to stress the human factor here. And the electrification usually is having multiple people work together to come up with a successful plan. It's not just the fleet manager, it's not a sustainability manager. A facilities manager has to be involved, and typically this is not somebody who deals with the fleet on a day-to-day basis, but also, most importantly, is the drivers. And having the buy-in from the drivers can make or break a pilot or a successful transition. So we've seen, like with drivers, if they have not been consulted, there is a lot of range anxiety. So getting them early access and how, like showing them what the vehicle are capable of and what they can do early on can help make a very successful transition. And if they're not on board, it's going to be a little bit harder. So I think driver is a very important piece, and sometimes it is overlooked in some plans that I've seen. Next, please. Okay, so what we have offered in our solution set at Geotab to help you with electrification is the EV suitability assessment. So what this tool does is it looks at the ICE fleet the travel, the trip information, and understand the daily driver needs of every vehicle. And then what it does is it compares it to the real world range of different EV makes and models. So we don't depend on EPA. We don't, what we do is we aggregate data from the hundreds. We have a little bit more than 100,000 EVs reported on our platform with different makes and models. So we understand the actual real world capability of these EVs in different conditions. And that's what we use, what we compare the actual fleet driving patterns for every vehicle with the models based on the real world data. And this is how we come up with the electrification planning. Next, please. Great. So when we're looking at the range, for instance, we model for every month of the year, depending on where this vehicle is driven, what is the maximum daily driven distance that this vehicle makes, and then what is the capability of the EV. And then whoever is using the tool can tweak what a best fit means for them. Are they okay with having the driver to figure out charging en route a few days a month, or is it 0 days a month? Depending on your tolerance for en route charging, you can tweak your inputs and then get different results. Next. And then after you figure out which vehicles are road candidates to be replaced based on the range analysis, and we also provide a high-level TCO on top of that, then it comes to charge infrastructure. So this is something we're working on to add to the EV suitability assessment, and it's the second part of the equation. You know which vehicles can be electrified. Now, what kind of infrastructure do I need to support them? And here we provide site-based analysis and recommendations for the number of chargers and the power and the energy consumption, but we also compare different scenarios. Do I need to get a managed charging or charging management software to manage those? What would the impact be for me getting this? Or do I need somebody to be on site and manage the charging queue so that they can move vehicles on and off after hours, on and off the chargers? Is it worth it or not? And then you can see all these scenarios and determine what makes sense for your operation. Next. And once you have EVs, I'm just going to go quickly and show you some of the solutions that we offer to make sure that you are confident in using these EVs. So the first one is charge monitoring. And the charge monitoring dashboard is used to make sure that the vehicles are going to be fully charged and ready when you need them to be ready. So if there are any problems with charging overnight, or somebody didn't plug the vehicle properly, or there's an error on the charger side, so you need to reset the charger, any of that, it can be easily highlighted in this dashboard. You can also set rules and notifications to make sure that, to minimize the disruption of charging issues. So when you come in the morning or whenever these vehicles need to be ready, you make sure you maximize the chance that they're ready. Next, please. EV charging history is a log. If you need to understand where charging is happening, how much charging is being added. So this is equivalent to a fuel fill-ups report, for instance, so that you understand exactly how much energy is going into which vehicles, in case you need this data for other purposes. Next. And also looking at the long-term health of your vehicles, we have recently launched the EV performance page, and this helps you understand what you're getting out of the EVs you purchased. How much is the actual range that you're getting for different individual vehicles based on their recent driving? So range is going to change with temperature, with the season. So you understand, you get a realistic view whenever you come, based on the recent few weeks, how much range should you expect today? Also, it helps you understand the degradation of the battery, which vehicles, how much degradation are you seeing month over month, and which vehicles are degrading faster than others. So all of this information is available to you in this dashboard. Next. And we're focused on electrification, but also we recognize that electrification is one piece of the puzzle that is asset utilization, that is based on asset utilization and asset life cycle planning. So the least emitting vehicles are the vehicles that you do not add to your fleet. So we are looking at electrification as just one tactic that is complemented by asset utilization at the beginning, right sizing, understanding right sizing, making sure you do not have excess vehicles. This will have the most impact on emissions, and then adding an aspect of electrification to add electrification potential. So these are things that we are working on, and our next webinar that's coming in January, we are going to be doing a deeper dive on asset utilization, asset lifecycle planning, and how all of this works to give you a leaner fleet, and where electrification is just one piece of that. Great.
Thanks, Hani. Great job. Next on the agenda, just CARB update. Everyone on this call should know about CARB and Clean Truck Check. That was a feature we added. And just to backtrack a little bit, we offer a lot of, there's probably a lot of people on this call that are using Geotab, maybe some, I suspect some that are not using Geotab. Everything that we've showed is as part of the product. There's nothing extra like for the EVSA. That's something that is that the state of California required, and that we monitor all these electric vehicles. So it's part of the contract requirements. The Clean Truck Check was not part of the requirements, but we added it to our product offering. So those vehicles that right now are over 14,000 pounds and have to share that data twice a year, that is included. If you plug in Geotab into the port, you just enroll that in the database, and it'll share it with CARB so that you are in compliance. And next year it moves to 4 times a year for those vehicles that you don't have to remove from the fleet and test with your own scan tools, or it's all done over the air, which is similar to the bar order, which is next. One other thing that we've had to do is when our product ships, it comes with a sticker in California. So if you relocate the OBD2 port or the connector, the data link connector, DLC also referred to, that is not allowed under a California vehicle code order. So we've gone through independent lab testing. So the sticker comes. So when we relocate the data link connector, you can have your vehicle always connected. You do not have to remove Geotab. You don't have to worry about a fine of upwards of $40,000 per vehicle, which is a good assurance that we're not impeding on any of your scan equipment. And this is the bar, only applicable to government customers that are approved. So you would just submit a request for your light duty vehicles to the bar CTP program. And if you are qualified, we would add your information, an API call on the database for you, sharing those vehicles that are eligible into BAR's API every night. And then you don't have to bring those vehicles in. At the end of a year, you'll know what vehicles you don't have to SMOG check. Don't have to get into this in much details. The contract is available. There's no contract commitment term. So basically we have to earn your business every month. There's no upfront charges. The contract is $850 for self-install or $1975. It's extended right now through 27, and then another 2 years on top of that, which we suspect we'll have. But there's no contract that you have to secure. We have to earn your business every month. Our next meeting topics is a deeper dive, as Hani shared, into utilization, which we're launching a new product at the end of January in beta, and we want to showcase that to all of you. Video telematics, where we are with that, how it relates to general services or public sector, dealing with more unions, dealing with that sensitive nature of cameras in a vehicle. And then another product that we offer is called Altitude, which is a little different. It's more for your transportation planning group. So looking at where most hard-braking events occur, what classification of vehicles are entering and exiting on-ramps at what time of day. So understanding helps you guide like into a vision zero type of a focus for your city and county, understanding what you can impact utilizing all that data. And this is basically utilizing anything that drives on your intersect or you're on your highway or your city that has a Geotab connected device in there, which is a lot in California. So I'm looking forward to our next call. That's all I have for today.
Yeah, I'm with Sacramento County Fleet Services Division. This is me. However, everything we talk about today is due to a whole team of people here at Fleet, over 100 employees, and the support of our Department of General Services. Part of the theme about what I'm going to talk about today is how each fleet is unique. And so, we have a lot of people on the call from different areas. This kind of shows the area of Sacramento County and some of the uniqueness of our county. And we're 994 square miles, population of about 106 million people. Who we serve are the county residents, visitors, and businesses of Sacramento County, as well as all the departments within the county. I have 24 listed there, or not all shown, but there's actually more than 24. Some of the uniqueness of our county is we're located in a low-lying delta area consisting of the Sacramento and other rivers. We maintain a lot of old levee roads, old drawbridges that belong to the county, as well as, urban areas within the county. So, there's some uniqueness with the area we need to cover and the type of infrastructure we need to maintain and the community services we need to provide. And we're going to rip through these slides in the beginning pretty quick so we can spend some more time on the end. But our fleet is a little over 2,800 units. You can see the makeup there. 73% of that's light, and that includes law enforcement. 22% medium and 5% off-road. We do have about 460 department-owned units, and we'll talk a little bit about those. Our annual fuel usage in 24 was just under 3.4 million gallons of fuel. That's all fuels, gaseous and liquid fuels. And our vehicle miles traveled was right around 22 million. You see the makeup of our fleet there. We have 7 maintenance facilities, 97 fleet employees, about 73 technicians. We are ASE Blue Seal certified, and we have a light and heavy fleet manager, a division chief, and then we have our procurement and advanced planning and sustainability. Our entire Department of Waste Management fleet runs on renewable natural gas. This started way back in '99. We're going to go over a little bit of a history of our fleet here. We do have a good number of RNG trucks in our DOT department. And so our gaseous fuel was 1.4 million gallons in 2024. And part of the theme here is identifying where the most of your fuel is burned. I think people outside of fleet or the public may look at the number of vehicles and say, well, you have all these light duty vehicles, why aren't they electric or alternative fuels? Where really that's where not a lot of our fuel, I don't want to say not a lot of, but that's where the least of our fuel consumption is. Most of our fuel consumption is in the heavy vehicles. Diesels, we're running renewable diesel, and we used a little over 675,000 gallons of renewable diesel in 2024. So you see a mix of our fuels. Our total fuel burn was 64% alternative or renewable, and that counts hybrids, but you see the number there of 59% if you take hybrids out. I'll tell you a little more about why I think that's relevant later in the presentation. This achieves about 49%, actually over 49% of greenhouse gas reduction if we were to burn all that fuel in typical petroleum fuels. So I see that as quite an achievement for our fleet and the county. This is a little bit of our history. We started way back in '99 with the heavy duty low emission vehicle acquisition policy. And you can see in '01, we converted a large group of our refuse trucks. 2012, first EV chargers. We opened the first combination fast fill, slow fill station in the county in 2015. Also in 2015, we did our first GPS or telematics pilot, and that becomes relevant in some of our discussions further on in this presentation too, and the difference between municipal and private fleets. We did our first renewable diesel pilot in 2016, and you can see some of our other accomplishments. Of note, and part of our discussion about telematics in a municipal fleet is we just finished completing our heavy duty fleet and getting GPS in all of our vehicles, all of our powered vehicles, just late last year. These are some county initiatives and some of the other regulatory compliance on the state level. So we do have a climate action plan. We do have in 2020, the County Board of Supervisors declared a climate emergency. And then you see the executive order and the California Resources Advanced Clean Fleets. Also some other CARB programs that we comply with. I won't go into each of these, but it just shows the complexity of compliance. Through all of our initiatives through the years, it has gained us some notoriety in the municipal fleet world. And you see we won #1 green fleet in 2018, and we participate in that pretty much yearly, and you see some of our latest standings below there. This is kind of a representation of our fleet makeup. You see hydrogen Mirais, CNG, chip dumps, and dump trucks, our slow fill line for all the refuse trucks, electric vehicles. The service truck on the left bottom is a CNG vehicle. The tractor mower, that's used down in the Delta to keep the oleanders and a lot of the brush under control. And, you know, that's a good example of equipment that is tough to electrify at this point. And so we're running renewable diesel to offset as much petroleum as possible. All right, we'll get into the meat of this a little bit and stop talking about our fleet so much. Again, each fleet is unique. You know, cities may have a smaller footprint where the state, you know, Duane was talking about a whole state within that state, you know, different climates, geography, altitude, all that, some of the challenges he talked about. And so it's important to take all this information in, but apply it to your fleet and identify what are your challenges, what kind of geography, what kind of territory you're trying to cover. And you're going to find operational challenges and unique operations that are pretty unique to your fleet. I put some pictures here because over the years I've asked crews for pictures and I've been out on job sites, and I encourage you to do that when you can. I know we get busy, but it really opens your eyes to what your vehicles need to do and the work that these guys need to perform, and sometimes not ideal conditions, as you see there. And so it kind of brings home the fact that you can plan stuff out on paper, but it's not always like that in the real world. So this is about identifying what your operator's needs. Couple other just little pictures. You know, there's one of those old bridges that a tall truck hit, and our crews had to go out and do an emergency repair on it. And these things, you know, the conditions don't align themselves for these things to get done. We need to work through the conditions. We talked a lot about data, and that's the whole point in this, and we're going to get deeper into the granular data, but it's important to not neglect the basics of fleet management. Do your best to use the management tools at your disposal. Make sure you run a safe shop, that your PMs are current, that your PM quality is good, your utilization is right. Because all the data can really help you a lot more if you're doing everything you can with the basic management practices. For municipal fleets, you know, part of the reason that some of our initiatives took the length of time that they did was that we needed to update policies and have meet and confers with bargaining units. And so I encourage you to review your policies around your transportation policy, especially around use of electronic devices and GPS telematics. Make sure that your policies allow for that. Have those discussions with your bargaining units to make sure that you're not going to be ready to install vehicles and then all of a sudden get caught up in, you know, complaints on that in that regard. You know, perform custom surveys. You know, you'll see how you're doing in your customers' eyes, because we can, you know, kind of get into our own job and have one perception of how we're doing. Asset management. I really think this is important. Electric infrastructure, purchasing electric vehicles, all these initiatives take time. So as far as asset management, don't wait and let your fleet get old. Don't wait for the perfect solution while you're operating costly, old, inefficient vehicles. Keep up on your vehicle replacements, and, you know, benefit from the latest technology, even if it's not where you want to end up. Don't put yourself in a position where you need to replace a large portion of your fleet while you're trying to go electric. Collaboration and communication. This is really important, especially in a municipal setting. If you've got a city council or for the county board of supervisors, you know, reach out to your facilities management. Everybody's talked a little bit about that. Real estate. You know, in the county, we have leased facilities that we may need to alter lease agreements in order to install charging where we need it. So everybody needs to be involved, including your power utility, which for us, we're fortunate to be in a SMOG area. And understand your organization's environmental and sustainability policies and goals. I won't go too much into this. Hani talked about the Clean Truck Check program. You know, with us, we're taking advantage of those benefits, and not having to remove vehicles from service for SMOG checks is huge. That probably alone, you know, pulling vehicles from service and moving them to facilities to do SMOG checks probably pays for the GPS, or more than pays for that in itself, as well as all the other data benefits we're going to go into. You know, safety is huge. As most of us fleet managers know, safety can make you or break you. If you have accidents, if you have workman's comp claims, those are some of the most costly things that we can avoid. Also the vehicle data in real time, emissions fault notifications. So you see all those benefits that Hani went into. Asset management, we do a lot of life cycle forecasting here at the county, and we're going to go into that a little bit. I want to check my time here. This is just some tips. when you're getting ready for telematics, conduct pilots if you need to make the business case. You may not have that challenge. It's becoming pretty mainstream now. But a pilot is a good way to show the benefits of that without being fully invested and to convince stakeholders. We talked about bargaining unification, notification, purchasing. The state contract is a great tool. So just like Hani went into, and also Drake. When you're choosing a telematics systems, make sure that your IT systems are compatible. It's a great benefit for us to have all these systems communicating and being able to share data between them. All right, this is just a safety dashboard. We're going to go through some visuals here. Nothing really new here, but it just shows, how you can monitor safety. We export that data into Power BI, and so we can sort. Don't try to read that, but I mean, we can sort parking locations, departments, and determine where vehicles park at night, which is very helpful. This is a parking location map for our county that derived from Geotab, and this shows basically we have about 80 parking locations throughout the county. This shows the concentration, and this doesn't tell the whole story. You've really got to look at all the data and marry it together to put together a cohesive plan. This is just real-time current location map that you'd see if you were looking to see where your vehicles are, and you see the clusters of vehicles and individual vehicles all over the county. All right, we'll get into this a little bit. So when we're looking at replacing vehicles and when we come up with our scheduled replacement list, we look at what needs to be replaced. We want to do the EV suitability assessment. This is a report we came up with, and we have a 110-mile threshold. Not that that's the range of the vehicle, but in this case, these are trucks with bodies on them. And we figured that the rise-on truck at 165-mile range would probably be a good fit. So we put together this. It's a very simple report, but it's got a lot of data in the background. And so rather than use 160, because we have range anxiety, we have battery degradation, we have all those factors, how much load. And so we figured if it's 160, then 110 is the safe mileage. And so we pulled this report to sort, to show what is the average daily distance, what's the max daily distance. And we can look in the background of where those locations are. But as you can see, these are the days in the greater than 110 column, the number of days for a whole year that the vehicle went over 110 miles. So by looking at this data, you can see that just about all of these vehicles are candidates for an EV. And in the case where those mileages exceeded the range, you can look at those locations and the activities throughout the day and see that many, in fact, nearly all of those instances are avoidable. We're going to tweak this report to show times of day, where the dwell times are, and when they match up to where our county facilities are. And so that's something we're working on that's not done yet. We won't spend a lot of time on this. It's just internal reports we use Power BI. We use M5 AssetWorks, and it's a very valuable tool with a ton of data, but it's not visually pleasing and it's tough to sort. You have to pull a report, and whatever it spits out, you're kind of stuck with until you go back and pull another report. Where Power BI, we can look at data and sort it in real time. Tim, how am I doing? Because
You're doing fine. Maybe if you want to get maybe 5 to 7 more minutes, if that works,
Okay.
then we have 15 minutes for questions.
All right, we'll get through this quickly. So fleet vehicle replacement, we built a forecasting tool in-house using our data, Geotab data and FMIS data, which is Asset Works, to forecast out our vehicle replacements. Right now, our fleet average age, because most of our vehicles are on a 10-year life cycle. I say most, there are other life cycles we use, but most are 10 years, so the average life cycle should be 5 if you're keeping up on your replacements. Currently, we're at 5.1. There's a point that reason I bring this point up. This is a visual. I have a disclaimer here. This is not an actual budget. This is not our actual replacement plan. This is just showing the capabilities of the tool. But this is actual fleet age. And this builds in an inflation factor. It looks at when the vehicle went into service and what the purchase cost was. And it forecasts out, it looks at mileage and utilization, and it tracks whether the replacement's going to come by mileage before the 10 years is up, or if it's going to come in 10 years. And then it adds the inflation factor that we can control in the background. And then it plots this out. Then in this case, the light blue is what we've already got budgeted and in process of replacement. And the dark blue is what is not scheduled. So you can look at this and start controlling some of those years that are going to be heavy expenditure years and start managing that in the background. This is in the background. This is the sorting that you can achieve. You can do it by department, by class, by just by weight, anything you want. You can see the slider bar on the right, kind of near the top, where we can sort for 8,500 or above just to look at just carb ACF. So this is a valuable tool for us. You can see near the left side all the years, so you can click each of those years and see where the forecasted replacements are coming in those years, and then sort by department so you can provide that information. Right now, we're working on providing information for years, outlying years, what replacements are coming so departments can start planning for charging. And we're starting to have those meetings to develop and even hired consultants to start looking at charging for all of our locations. This is where department-owned units are relevant. So if the departments aren't looking at the life cycles and you have those vehicles in your fleet, you're still working on them even if you don't own them. And my point is that a lot of times department-owned fleet services isn't looking at replacing those. And so those need to be part of the discussion as well. You need to be advising those departments. They need to start figuring out where the funds are going to come from to replace those, or you look at that utilization, and maybe there's a justification to downsize the department owned, because these are part of your regulatory reporting, whether you like it or not. And so a lot of times this area right here is low-hanging fruit. The departments don't like to hear, hey, you should get rid of this, but you need to have those discussions and back it up with the data. And that's where the telematics really comes in. We adjusted this tool to look at EVs, in this case, 30%. I'm going to have to hurry through these, but we had 30% generally for light duty because we have vehicles that are on the market now, and we know about what that spread is between an ICE vehicle and an EV. And usually for light, it's 30 to 40% increase. This is kind of a growth plan. When we look at that forecasting, this is just an example we did for one department to show them, the numbers of vehicles they may be getting in the year and what that means for charging. And this is just a communication tool. We're going to refine this more and automate it. Right now, it's pretty manual. But these departments want to know, hey, if I'm putting in charging, where do I need to be and when? So this kind of helps with that discussion. This is heavy duty. We figure 80% for vocational truck, and there's a reason for that, which I'll go through very quickly, and then we'll finish up. These vehicles cost about 3 times as much as a diesel equivalent vehicle, and they come only in these configurations and wheelbases. However, we build trucks like this that don't have as much room on the frame for batteries, and that the underneath is all taken up. And we have this is just one way that we look at the cost of what it may cost in the future, separating out the chassis cost versus the body costs, and then adding the inflation rates. So just an example of how you might look at it, because just because these trucks are 3 times as much doesn't mean that these trucks are going to be 3 times as much. So just one way to look at it. Use of grants and incentives. I guess before you spend a lot of time and effort and resources on grants, make sure that they meet your use case. Make sure that you're going to be able to abide by the data collection and reporting. Make sure that for your case, the benefits outweigh the cost. And, you know, just understand too, if you need charging infrastructure and you know you're gonna need it regardless, whether you have grants or incentives or not, don't wait for a grant opportunity to come up to start planning your project. A lot of grants look for shovel-ready projects. And if you wait to plan it when the grant is announced, you're behind the 8 ball. You'll never be able to make the deadline. This is just a recap, you know, process improvement, internal reporting, identify the low hanging fruit. Where's the most fuel burned in your fleet, and address that first. I say the cleanest gallon of fuel is a gallon that you never consume. Third-party consulting. The county has gone out to bid, and we've awarded to a third-party consultant to help us assess our parking locations and the whole fleet, where the energy is going to come from, and develop a charging infrastructure plan. So sometimes it's not efficient, or you want a third opinion, or second opinion. And for those use cases where it makes sense, you might consider hiring a grant writer, third-party grant writer, if it makes sense to your use case. That's me.